Deep in the freezing rain of the Italian Apennine Mountains, a solitary man was sprinting down a pitch-black set of train tracks. His lungs burned. He was terrified. He was running to summon rescue for the 600 people trapped inside the mountain behind him. But what brakeman Michel Paolo didn't know as he ran through the dark was that he was already too late. He wasn't running to save them. He was leaving a tomb. When we think of the worst train disasters in history, we imagine catastrophic derailments, twisted metal, and fiery explosions. But the deadliest train disaster in European history had no crash. It had no fire. When rescuers finally found the train, it was perfectly intact on the rails. It had simply stopped. This is the unbelievable story of a mechanical trap, a silent killer, and the horrifying fate of freight train 8017. To understand what happened inside that tunnel, you first have to understand what was happening outside it. It is 1944. Italy is collapsing. Mussolini has fallen. Germany has invaded its own former ally. The country is simultaneously fighting a world war and a civil war. Bombed from above, rationed from within, starving at the ground level. Every available resource across Europe, fuel, food, materials, was swallowed by the war machine. Troops and military equipment took priority on every railway line. Most passenger trains were destroyed by bombings, seized by the Allies, or placed under heavy restriction. Civilians who needed to travel required special authorization, and that authorization was nearly impossible to obtain. Even with the right paperwork, strict ticket limits were enforced. There was simply no room left for ordinary people. But hunger doesn't respect laws. So they found another way. Freight trains, the working cargo lines, rarely inspected, running regularly, had quietly become an underground lifeline. Men, women, children, hopping aboard in the dark, trading rations, carrying food from the countryside, feeding their families the only way left. Railway officials knew. They looked away. This shadow network had a name: the Black Market Express. Train 8017 was one of its busiest routes. March 2nd, evening. Train 8017 leaves. Naples, heading toward Potenza. On paper, a cargo train. 47 freight wagons, no passengers. In reality, between 600 and 700 human beings are crammed into those wagons. Sitting on floors, sleeping on sacks, trusting a machine they cannot see. At Battipaglia, the electric engine is swapped for 2 steam locomotives, required for the steep mountain climb ahead. These engines run on coal, but not good coal. Wartime coal, low grade, full of impurities, the kind that burns dirty and weak, the kind that produces something invisible, something odorless, something that kills you while you sleep. And the officials already knew this. Just a few weeks earlier, a train had passed through a tunnel on this very same railway line. The engineer lost consciousness from the coal fumes, fell into the gap between the locomotive and the tender, and died. The incident was ruled an accident. No safety review was ordered. No changes were made to the route. No warnings were issued to the crews still running these trains every night. By midnight, the train reaches Balvano Rizziliano station. More passengers board in the darkness. The train now weighs over 500 tons, not counting the people. It stretches nearly 500 meters long, operating far beyond safe limits. No one stops it. At 12:50 a.m., train 8017 leaves Balvano. A few kilometers ahead lies the Galleria delle Armi, nearly 2 kilometers long, steep, winding, L-shaped, with almost no natural ventilation. A previous train had already passed through that night, leaving thick residue of smoke still hanging in the dark, like something waiting. The train enters at barely 15 kilometers per hour. Then the rails, slick from recent rain, betray it. The wheels slip. Sand is released onto the tracks. It doesn't help. The engines strain under the impossible weight. Deep inside the tunnel, surrounded by darkness and rock, train 8017 shudders and stops. All but the last two wagons are swallowed by the mountain. And now, something invisible begins to fill the air. Carbon monoxide is not like other dangers. There is no fire, no explosion, no warning. It simply replaces the air. You don't smell it. You don't see it. You feel only a sudden heaviness, a warmth, like the deepest, most comfortable sleep you've ever fallen into. Most of the 600 people on that train were already asleep. They never knew anything had changed. At the front, the drivers panicked. They tried to restart the engines, flooding the tunnel with even more poison. They tried to reverse, but the brakemen at the rear, unable to communicate with the front crew, feared the train was derailing and applied the brakes hard. The train couldn't move forward, couldn't move backward, couldn't breathe. A few passengers stirred, noticed something was wrong, climbed down onto the tracks and tried to walk toward the exit. Their bodies were found later, collapsed just meters from fresh air, so close. Inside the wagons, the dying continued in absolute silence. When rescuers finally arrived, they described the victims' faces as peaceful, contented, still in their resting positions, but with small drops of blood beneath their noses. The lead driver was found still standing, leaning against his window, eyes closed, dead. Michelle Paolo is riding in the brake van, the very last car on the train, one of the only two wagons still outside the tunnel when everything stops. He can still breathe. He waits. The delay stretches past reason. Something is wrong. He descends from his van and walks into the tunnel, and then he sees them, body after body, in the wagons, on the tracks. Not a single sound, not a single movement. He turns and runs back down the tracks, into the cold mountain air. 1.8 kilometers of dark mountain railway between him and help. At 5:10 in the morning, over 3 hours after the train stopped, he finally reaches Balvano station. Station master Giuseppe Salonia is already awake, already pacing. The signal from the next station never came. Something is wrong. He knows it, and he has been waiting for answers in the dark. And then Michelle Paolo appears on the platform. Whatever Paolo says next, Salonia doesn't waste a second. He calls for help immediately. A rescue locomotive reaches the tunnel at 5:25 a.m. It cannot enter. The bodies are too many, too spread across the tracks to pass. Only the 40 passengers in the final wagons, those few cars that had stayed outside in the open air, are brought out alive. At 8:40 a.m., a second team finally hauls the train back to Balvano station. Families move slowly up and down the platform, scanning the faces of the dead laid side by side, searching for someone they recognize. Of the 600 who died, only 235 were ever identified. The rest, the poor, the undocumented, the invisible people of wartime Italy, were buried in 4 mass graves near the station. No religious ceremony. Only the railway crew received proper funerals. The next day, the line reopened. The Allied military government suppressed the story immediately. It would hurt morale, they said. The Italian authorities, embarrassed by the illegal passengers, were content to let it disappear. A parliamentary investigation came in 1951. 7 years later. The evidence? Long gone. No one was ever held accountable. The victims were reclassified as war casualties. Italy would not widely hear of this disaster until historian Gianluca Barneschi published his research in 2014. 70 years of silence. And Michel Paulo, the man who ran through the mountain dark and carried the weight of what he had seen all the way back to the living. History gives him barely a single sentence. He walked into that tunnel. He saw what no person should ever see, and he ran back toward the living, the only thing left that made sense. The Balvano Train Disaster remains Italy's deadliest railway tragedy. A catastrophe built from war, from poverty, from negligence, and from coal that burned just dirty enough to kill while everyone looked away. More than 600 people boarded train, 8,017 looking for food. By sunrise, most of them were dead. No crash, no fire, no explosion. Just a train sitting silently inside a mountain. And a country too consumed by war to notice.